Another day, another no ban list. Konami, what are you doing? Make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. So I wanted to talk about, like, ban lists, some things that didn't really touch down in the community. It's just kind of like a whole, like, big homage video. You know, we've had two Master Duel ban lists. I'm pretty sure we've had two ban lists for pretty much every other game that's not Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic's been through a ban list. Pokemon's been through basically rotation at this point, and we still don't have a list. But the OTS Championships are this weekend, so looking at this weekend, does Konami really want to invalidate an entire championship local RAN scaling event just to invalidate everything? The answer is, well, they should. All right, as we've had many discussions about the current format here and just how annoyingly bad this is. It's actually interesting because some people have the opposite opinion where this format is fine, which I can honestly see it. You know, when you have like a two-deck format, you know, you don't really have to worry about rogue, or your deck kind of edges things out. You know, ever since Tier has kind of stepped over the boundaries here as that better deck, I mean, Sprite is just... I would say Sprite's end boards are fair. All right, all that they end up doing is they just make the same end board. Dark Rule No More, something else ends up interrupting it, and then you check to see if you have recovery plays. You check yes, if you do, you can recover. If no, well, I mean, that's just kind of how Yu-Gi-Oh! Works at this point. So, meanwhile, you know, Tier is the random RNG deck that mills, and you're just like, oh, boy, you know, like... That's cool. So the question right now is, are we expecting some sort of ban list throughout, well, the rest of the week? I don't know, because it seems like every day some other platform has gotten a new list while the TCG is just left fossilized at this point. Just everybody's looking around. The interesting thing about this, you know, ever since they took away the date for the ban list, a lot of people have had like the same generalized like thought. It's like, why can't you put back, you know, a date for the TCG? Like last year, I don't know if you saw, but I think we only got like 3 ban lists. 2022, we got like 4. So the fact that this year we're literally looking at maybe the last list of the year, we got 2 lists relatively quickly back to back this year. But for some reason, you know, ever since they've removed that end date, it just kind of feels like a massive screw you to the community. I shouldn't need to tell you guys that. Like, you guys are literally living this right now. The fact that this giant company has taken away this end date check, it's absolutely hilarious to me at the end of the day. So that's that. That's like my qualms right now with the list. Now, with the way that the market is going right now, this is actually kind of interesting. The market has actually calmed down a little bit. Everybody's kind of looking around, because you remember during like the very early days of the list, there was that little thing where it showed like December on the website page. It's long since been removed, but a lot of people keep, you know, talking about being like, well, you know, there's not going to be a ban list until December, Robbie. I don't foresee that being the case, especially if the community is complaining enough about how the format is right now. The company has to act, right? Well, yes and no. I'm sure they've been looking at data from these top cut events, and when you have these 2-deck formats, you know, people don't get very happy with those things, right? Especially when they were just 2 products that you had to buy. Well, Robbie, you know, like, Konami thrives on selling the best deck out of the set, right? Konami doesn't need to have, you know, older decks be viable. Yeah, they don't need to have older decks be viable. I perfectly understand that. But the sad part is if you're like a rogue control player, or, you know, you've enjoyed playing older things like Sword Soul up to this point, well, bad news for you, all right? Like, your deck doesn't get the chance to shine. Plus, there's the whole Mystic Mind debate right now going around, you know, like, the community wants the card gone, but the longer that there's no ban list creeping on around here, the more that people have to deal with Runic Mind on a local level. It's actually great, because that deck has become such a plague to, like, locals all across the U.S. Like, people are just... I've read and heard so many tournament reports at this point. It's like, yeah, I just won locals activating, you know, Runic Field Spell, milling out my opponent. I had to activate Mystic Mind like twice throughout the whole day. People are not prepared for that matchup, and it amazes me. Like, The Runic cards, I understand, mill the out for certain things. I've even seen some of these Runic decks. They're like, yeah, I don't even have to play Mystic Mine. Like, the deck has become the rogue breaker of localized metagame. And it's great. You know, on the higher end of the competitive spectrum right now, Tyr and Sprite are duking it out. They are having a wonderful time smashing the competitive scene. But once again, localized metagame right now. Runic mill out, Mystic Mine burn. I mean, you're seeing a little bit of Mystic Mine burn in the regional scenario. It shows up and does its thing, but once again, I'm not too surprised about this. So, card prices. Back to that point here, because I wanted to get out the thing that's just saying that, like, even though, like, we are in, like, a centralized metagame, card prices are starting to move. You know, with the with how bad the tins were this year in terms of, like, overall pull rate, the staples are starting to go up. And the longer that we don't get lists, that's going to keep certain cards in check. And it's actually kind of an interesting little thing, because people are looking at Tyr right now and they're like, oh my god, like, something could get hit for this. I don't want to invest in this engine. Same thing with Sprite. You know, people are like, well, I don't want to touch this because I don't, you know, even though it looks like it's going to be the next competitively viable deck for the next couple months, then you've got other people out here that are taking advantage of the no ban list, and they're just fire selling, you know, all of this stuff. It's very interesting, because while the community wants a rejuvenation in the metagame, you know, the market flip side of things here is like, well, you know, the longer we maintain this, you know, stagnation here, that means that, well, my cards aren't going to go down in price. You know, I don't have to worry about Konami amputating, you know, something from my deck. And I suppose that's fine at the end of the day. You know, the market is always going to be one different creature versus another. Like, that's just how it works. You know, it's Yu-Gi-Oh, all right? Like, people always want their cards to be worth something. I get that, all right? Ban lists always end up ruining that feel, because, you know, you spend all this money, all this time gathering these cards, so I get it. The ban list taking longer to get here means more money you can get overall. It's actually interesting, because I was having this discussion with my friend who does, like, a lot of vending for one of his locals. And he's like, the shop is very afraid to want to buy cards right now because there's no ban list. And if a possible threatening ban list is stopping a company from wanting to engage in buying new cards because they're afraid they're going to lose, that's also a pretty bad aspect on the on Konami as well. You know, if you have your player base screaming that change needs to happen, and you're just sitting there going, we don't care. It's just a piss poor outlook for, like, the way the game looks. Like, I don't know, man. The removal of the ban list date really just hurt a lot of things. If you have stores that are really, really, really up in the air to take current metagame pieces, that's a really bad outlook as well. I mean, yeah, you can just go sell online, sure. And you've got other people that are just like, okay, the longer this waits, the better off it is. And like I said with tins, I mean, tins actually haven't stopped. All right, like, you might think, like, the pull rates this year affected the tins. Nah, generic staples are selling. So many people right now are looking at just the turnover right now, and they're going, cool, ban list comes. I get all my cheap staples now before they rise, you know? Pot of Prosperity. You know, Droplet might not be in season right now. People are looking at it. Same thing with Lightning Storm. Lightning Storm might not see an immense amount of play, but people are looking at these cards. They're going, well, these can only go up, right? Well, I mean, technically the answer is yes. The cards can only rise in price, and we've seen this in the past with many staples. Even if something from the tins, like Prosperity, was to get semi-limited, like, you know, we saw with the OCG, consistency hits along the way, I don't think it's going to knock it off, you know, too much. We've seen in the past with Solemn Warning, where after Solemn Warning got hit to 2, you know, the card shot way up in price. So, from where I'm sitting right now, yeah, it's an interesting time to be in the game. I'm hoping, once again, every time I make these styles of videos, that it would be today, hopefully it would be the list, but it seems like, you know, we're in that season. All these other games are flipping through the list. All the other competitive parts of Yu-Gi-Oh, you know, have gotten their list. The OCG just got a list, which, one of the best lists we've seen in the game's history, and, you know, once again, the TCG's just shrugging it off. That's why it's like, it's so hard to be, like, an avid supporter of the TCG when you look at a company and you're like, wow, you know, business practices that are questionable yet again. You love to see it. So what do you guys think of X days until ban list? Yay. Please comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and peace out, guys. Ugh.
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.